Steam shimmered on the highway as a $500,000 black Bentley sat motionless, its hood gaping open like a wounded animal. Victoria Sterling, heiress to a $16 billion pharmaceutical empire, paced beside it, platinum phone clutched tight in her hand. "I don't care if you have to fly a mechanic in by helicopter. I have a board meeting in 2 hours," she barked into the receiver. But the truth was, the call had cut off 20 minutes ago. No one was listening. That's when a rusty bicycle rolled to a stop beside the luxury car. On it was a 12-year-old girl, Luna Martinez. Her curious eyes scanned the scene as she hopped off and stepped closer. Luna had been deaf since birth, but she had a gift most people couldn't imagine. She could sense vibrations and patterns in a way others never could. "What do you want, kid?" Victoria snapped, her voice sharp with irritation. "Can't you see I'm busy?" Luna shook her head and pointed to the engine, making quick signs with her hands. Victoria groaned. "Great. Now I've got to deal with a deaf child in the middle of nowhere. Just go play somewhere else." But Luna didn't move. She placed her palm against the chassis, reading the faint rhythms only she could feel. Suddenly, her eyes lit up. She slipped off her backpack, pulling out a worn-down toolkit, her grandfather's gift. Victoria gasped. "Hey, don't touch that. Do you have any idea what this car is worth?" But it was too late. Luna had already spotted the problem: a loose hose in the cooling system. Her fingers worked with precision, reconnecting it and making a few adjustments. Seconds later, the Bentley purred back to life, smooth as ever. Victoria froze. In less than 15 minutes, this child had solved an issue her own elite mechanics would need hours to diagnose. "How did you—" Victoria's voice trailed off. And then she saw it. Around Luna's neck, hanging from a simple cord, was a small gold medallion. Victoria's breath caught. It was identical to the ones her company had distributed decades ago during a controversial health program in struggling neighborhoods. A program quietly shut down after it left dozens of children with irreversible hearing loss. Luna, smiling innocently, waved and pedaled away on her bike. But Victoria stood frozen, her face pale, the weight of the past crashing back. This wasn't just coincidence. And if you're wondering how a child's simple act of kindness could unravel one of the biggest hidden scandals in corporate history, make sure you're subscribed, because this story is only just beginning. 3 days later, sitting high in her office on the 52nd floor of Sterling Pharmaceuticals, Victoria still couldn't shake the image of that medallion. She flipped through old files. Project Silence. She remembered it well. A so-called community program that ended with dozens of families silenced through settlements and threats. Her assistant entered quietly. "We found the girl, Luna Martinez, 12 years old, lives with her grandparents in Riverside, about 25 miles out." Victoria's stomach tightened. Riverside, the exact place where the tests had been run. "Hire investigators," Victoria whispered, her voice trembling despite herself. "I want to know everything about this family, and I want to know how she can do what even trained engineers can't." Meanwhile, Luna returned home from another day at Jefferson High. She was one of the only deaf students in regular classes, but her spirit never wavered. At the door, her grandparents Carmen and Roberto greeted her warmly, their hands flowing in graceful sign language. "How was your day, my shining star?" Carmen asked, smiling as she signed the words. Luna beamed, for now her world was safe, but far above, powerful forces were stirring, and her life was about to collide with secrets buried for decades. "A wealthy woman came to my school today," Luna signed, her brows furrowing with unease. "She offered me a scholarship to some special academy, but something about her didn't feel right." Roberto froze mid-repair, the old radio forgotten on the kitchen table. "What did she look like?" he asked carefully. "Blonde hair, fancy clothes, drove a huge black car. She said she'd heard about my gift with machines," Luna explained, still unsettled. Her eyes drifted to the necklace her grandmother Carmen wore. Roberto's stomach clenched. 20 years earlier, when Luna had been just a toddler, Men in tailored suits had arrived in their community, promising free flu vaccines. Within months, dozens of children began losing their hearing. Doctors claimed it was coincidence, a quirk of genetics. But Carmen had kept the small medallion given to Luna during those injections, a bitter reminder of betrayal. Neither of them could have imagined that this little trinket would one day link the past to the present. "Luna," Roberto asked gently, "did this woman mention the name of her company or school?" "Sterling, something. Sterling Academy, I think." The name hit Roberto like a blow. Sterling Pharmaceuticals. He had memorized it long ago, branding it into his memory after years of searching for the people responsible for stealing his granddaughter's hearing and the futures of so many other children. That same night, far away in a glittering office tower, Victoria Sterling assembled 3 private investigators. "I want everything on the Martinez family," she ordered, her manicured fingers nervously tapping her pearl necklace. "Medical history, finances, legal ties, and above all, any record of procedures the girl may have undergone as a child." One of the men frowned. "With all due respect, Miss Sterling, why would a 12-year-old pose a threat to a multi-billion-dollar company?" Victoria's gaze turned icy. "Let's just say some unusual abilities can come from processes we'd rather keep buried. And if this family starts digging into the past, the fallout could cost us everything." What Victoria didn't know was that Roberto Martinez had been quietly preparing for this moment for 2 decades. Hidden in a shoebox in the attic were photographs, medical reports, statements from other families, and even tiny vials of the compound he had salvaged from the trash near the community center. That night, while Luna slept peacefully in her room, Roberto opened the box for the first time in years. His hands shook as he lifted a faded photograph. Little Luna at 3 years old, smiling brightly, still able to hear the lullaby her grandmother once sang. The last photo of her listening. Each new move Victoria made, each intimidation attempt, only hardened Roberto's resolve. She thought she was silencing him, but in truth, she was writing her own downfall, line by line, in the thickening notebook of evidence he guarded. The next morning, as Luna got ready for school, Roberto made a decision he had delayed for 20 years. He pulled a worn business card from his wallet and dialed a number he had memorized but never dared to use. "Dr. Patricia Morales, Corporate Injury Law," answered a firm voice. "Doctor," Roberto said quietly, "my name is Roberto Martinez. Do you remember the children from Riverside? The ones who lost their hearing 20 years ago?" There was a long silence. Then the lawyer's voice softened. "Mr. Martinez, I've been waiting for this call for years. Can you come to my office this afternoon?" Patricia Morales was no ordinary attorney. The daughter of Mexican immigrants, she had built her career fighting corporate misconduct after losing her own sister to a botched pharmaceutical trial. When Roberto arrived at her modest office and laid the shoebox on her desk, Patricia's eyes widened. She examined the faded documents, photos, and especially the tiny glass samples with trembling hands. "Mr. Martinez, this is gold," she whispered. "If lab analysis confirms there are hidden neurotoxic compounds here, Sterling Pharmaceuticals won't be able to hide behind settlements or intimidation anymore." Roberto's jaw tightened. "They're back. A woman named Victoria Sterling is already approaching my granddaughter, dangling promises of scholarships while digging into our past." Patricia's expression hardened, her fists clenching. "Victoria Sterling," she said slowly. "The heir herself. If she's getting directly involved, it means your granddaughter is more dangerous to them than they want anyone to know." Meanwhile, in her glass office high above the city, Victoria's paranoia deepened. Reports from her investigators painted Roberto not as a simple retired mechanic, but as something far more threatening, a man with 2 decades of carefully preserved evidence that could burn her empire to the ground. Roberto had always seemed like a simple retired mechanic. What Victoria didn't realize was that before moving to Riverside, he had been a trained lab technician, skilled enough to preserve evidence in ways no corporation could easily discredit. Late one evening, Victoria's head of security entered her office. "The family is on the move," he reported. The grandfather was seen meeting with a lawyer who specializes in corporate injury cases. Victoria's hands went cold. "Who?" she demanded. "Patricia Morales." The name alone made her blood drain from her face. Patricia Morales, the same woman who had forced Sterling Pharmaceuticals into a $120 million settlement just 5 years earlier. Victoria's mask of confidence cracked, replaced by sharp calculation. "Offer the Martinez family $1 million to leave the state immediately," she ordered. Then, after a pause, her voice hardened. "And if they refuse, make sure they understand that resistance would be inconvenient." At school, Luna began to sense something was wrong. Her classmates whispered about men in suits asking questions in the office. Even her special education teacher, Mrs. Thompson, avoided her gaze, her hands trembling as she signed. During recess, Luna slipped behind the library, hiding as she texted her grandfather, "Grandpa, strange people are asking about me at school. I'm scared." The reply came instantly. "Come home now. Ask Mrs. Thompson to take you. Don't speak to anyone else." When Luna arrived home, she was surprised to find her grandparents with a woman she didn't know. Patricia Morales introduced herself in fluent sign language. Immediately, Luna's fear softened. "Luna," Patricia explained gently, "your special abilities are not an accident. They are the result of something that was done to you when you were very young, something that also happened to 72 other children." Luna's eyes widened. "That's why I can feel machines. Why I know exactly where the problem is." "Exactly," Patricia nodded. "The compound they injected into you altered certain parts of your brain. You lost your hearing, but you gained heightened sensory processing. Sterling Pharmaceuticals sees that as valuable. That's why they're watching you now." Roberto opened the old shoebox, spreading photographs across the table. Dozens of children between 2 and 5 years old, lined up in community centers, receiving injections. "They don't want to help you, my star," Carmen said, her hands trembling as she signed. "They want to study you, to replicate what was done." Luna sat in silence, processing everything. And then, to everyone's surprise, her face didn't crumble with fear. It hardened with determination. "Then we'll give them exactly what they deserve," she said calmly. "If they think they can use me, they'll find out this so-called failed experiment learned far more than they ever imagined." Patricia couldn't help but smile. She recognized that spark, the same fire that had carried her through her own battles. "Luna, if I showed you the electrical blueprints of a building, would you know how to access its security systems?" Luna's eyes gleamed with a sharp intensity. At that moment, everyone in the room realized Sterling Pharmaceuticals had just created its own enemy, an enemy born from their own mistakes. That night, while Victoria Sterling slept inside her $10 million mansion, wrapped in comfort and protected by the latest security technology, Luna Martinez was studying the architectural plans of Sterling Pharmaceuticals headquarters. Patricia had obtained the blueprints through public records, but only Luna could read them the way she did, tracing every circuit, every sensor, every weak point with her heightened perception. The corporation's greatest secret had forged a mind more dangerous than any cybersecurity engineer they could hire. The stage was set. Sterling Pharmaceuticals' annual shareholders meeting was being broadcast live to investors across the globe. Victoria Sterling stood proudly on stage, her voice amplified as she boasted of record profits. "Our neuroscience division has developed revolutionary treatments that have transformed lives worldwide," she declared confidently, unaware of the storm about to break. At the edge of the auditorium, Luna crouched by the audiovisual control panel. Her hands moved with surgical precision across the transmitter Patricia had prepared, a small device that would feed directly into the presentation system. Victoria raised her chin, smiling as she addressed the cameras. "Over the past 20 years, we have invested heavily in ethical, responsible research, always prioritizing the well-being of the communities we serve. At that exact moment, Luna activated the transmitter. The massive screens behind Victoria flickered once. Then the polished corporate presentation vanished, replaced with something horrifyingly different. Photographs. Dozens of children from Riverside and beyond. Little ones no older than 5, sitting in folding chairs inside makeshift community centers, receiving injections. The audience gasped. Victoria froze. Her empire was no longer in her control. The audience murmured, restless and confused, as Victoria Sterling turned pale at the images flashing across the giant screens. Photographs she thought had been buried forever were now on full display for the entire world to see. "There's a technical issue," she stammered, forcing a nervous smile. "Please fix this right away." But Luna Martinez was only getting started. The next file projected onto the screen was even more damning. An internal document dated 20 years ago, signed by Victoria's own father. Project Silence, Low-Income Population Testing Phase. The words were crystal clear in high definition, leaving no room for denial. "What is this?" a shareholder shouted, rising from his seat. "Project Silence? What does that mean?" Victoria frantically scrambled for the controls, trying to shut down the system, but Luna had already locked it. She had complete command. Then came the most chilling revelation: audio recordings, executives discussing numbers in cold, detached voices. 73 cases of permanent hearing loss, said a man's voice, the unmistakable tone of Howard Sterling, Victoria's father. "We consider this within the acceptable margin for the scientific gains achieved." Gasps filled the room. "Turn this off!" Victoria screamed at her technicians, her carefully curated mask shattering in front of investors, employees, and a live audience of over 50,000 viewers. "This is sabotage!" At that moment, Patricia Morales stood calmly and walked to the microphone. "My name is Patricia Morales. I am an attorney who has spent decades defending families harmed by corporations like this one. What you are watching is not sabotage. It is evidence. Evidence gathered over 20 years by those who lost everything because of Sterling Pharmaceuticals." The camera swung toward Patricia, broadcasting her words live across the globe. "This company conducted secret experiments in vulnerable communities, leaving 73 children permanently deaf. One of them is my client, Luna Martinez, who is here tonight." The camera panned, catching Luna as she stepped into the light. She raised her hand in a small, calm wave. Victoria's knees nearly gave way. She finally understood the magnitude of her mistake. She hadn't underestimated just a deaf girl. She had underestimated a brilliant mind sharpened by the very experiments she thought were forgotten. "You want to know how we uncovered all of this?" Patricia asked, her voice slicing through the stunned silence. "Luna possesses heightened sensory abilities, an unintended consequence of Sterling's so-called research. She can detect patterns in electronic systems that even trained engineers struggle to see. The truth you've all witnessed tonight was exposed because of the very experiment this company inflicted upon her." The screen flickered again. This time, it showed the most damning evidence yet: surveillance footage of Howard Sterling himself, ordering staff to destroy documents and threatening families who dared ask questions. "My father has been dead for 5 years!" Victoria cried desperately. "I didn't know anything about this!" Patricia didn't flinch. She simply motioned to the screen again. The audience gasped as Victoria's own emails appeared, addressed to private investigators. "Offer the Martinez family $1 million to relocate. If they refuse, make sure they understand that resistance would be inconvenient." The silence that followed was suffocating. Investors stood and began filing out, some already on their phones, canceling contracts and liquidating shares. Within minutes, the broadcast chat exploded with outrage, hashtags trending worldwide. Sterling Pharmaceuticals' stock price collapsed in real time, down nearly 80% as the scandal unfolded live. And then came the final blow. Federal agents, already briefed by Patricia in advance, entered the auditorium with warrants in hand. "Victoria Sterling," the lead agent declared, "you are under arrest for conspiracy, intimidation, destruction of evidence, and unlawful medical testing. The snap of handcuffs echoed like a closing chapter. Victoria turned one last time toward Luna, her eyes wide with disbelief. "How did you do this?" she whispered. Luna didn't need to hear the words to understand. Through sign language, translated aloud by Patricia, she gave her answer. "You taught me that sometimes you have to lose something to gain something greater. I lost my hearing, but I gained the ability to sense injustices others ignore." The auditorium erupted, not with applause, but with a collective awareness that history had just shifted. 2 years later, the world knew her name. At just 14, Luna Martinez walked through the halls of MIT, the youngest student ever accepted into its biomedical engineering program. The same serene smile that had toppled a billion-dollar empire still graced her face, a quiet reminder that justice, once awakened, cannot be silenced. "Professor Chun," Luna signed to her advisor, "I've completed the prototype. It adapts itself to each patient's brain frequencies automatically." Dr. Chun examined the sleek device in awe. A hearing aid, unlike any before it, one that could restore sound to millions across the world. "Luna, this is extraordinary. You've turned your own loss into a gift for others." The irony was undeniable. The very lab where Luna developed her breakthrough was funded by money confiscated from Sterling Pharmaceuticals. The government had redirected the $16 billion empire into victim compensation and ethical research programs. Meanwhile, far away at Alderson Federal Penitentiary, Victoria Sterling was enduring her second year behind bars. The woman who once ruled an empire now lived in a 6-foot cell. Her cellmate was a mother who had lost her daughter to another pharmaceutical scandal, an irony not lost on anyone. "Sterling, visitors," a guard barked. Victoria shuffled to the visitors' room. Her former lawyer sat waiting, his face grim. "The last of your properties were auctioned yesterday. There's nothing left. More than 300 lawsuits have been filed against you personally." The woman who once lived in a mansion now owned nothing but her prison uniform, and a legacy taught in universities worldwide as a cautionary tale of greed. The Martinez family, however, had become symbols of hope. Roberto Martinez traveled the globe, advocating for victims of unethical experiments. Carmen opened a Riverside community center that offered free sign language interpretation to Hispanic families. All 73 affected families received full compensation, Patricia Morales explained during a primetime interview. But the real victory is the legal precedent. From now on, no company can exploit vulnerable communities without consequences. The case became a global landmark for human rights. At 14, Luna Martinez stood at the podium of Harvard University, addressing a packed auditorium. She paused, then signed slowly as Patricia interpreted. "Many people ask if I feel anger toward Victoria Sterling. The truth? She taught me the most valuable lesson of my life, that our greatest strength comes from the moments others try to make us feel weakest." The room erupted in applause. Sterling thought my deafness made me lesser. What she didn't realize is that sometimes when you lose something, you gain something infinitely stronger, the ability to sense injustices that others ignore. That same day, Luna announced the creation of the Martinez Morales Foundation, dedicated to prosecuting companies that prey on marginalized communities. Their first investigation had already begun, a cosmetics company testing products on orphanages overseas. During a Q&A, a journalism student asked, "Luna, if you could go back in time and prevent the experiments, would you do it?" She paused, then smiled softly. "Of course, I would want my hearing back. And of course, I wish no child had suffered. But if those experiments hadn't happened, Victoria Sterling would still be destroying lives today. Sometimes, our deepest scars become the weapons we need to fight injustice." 2 years after fixing a broken Bentley on the side of the road, Luna had fixed something far greater, an entire system that once allowed corporations to exploit the powerless. Some people are born to repair machines. Others are born to repair the world. Victoria Sterling had tried to silence a deaf girl, but instead, She amplified her voice to the entire world. Because Luna Martinez discovered something profound. True hearing has nothing to do with ears. It's about having the courage to listen to the silent cries of those who need justice. Have you ever turned your greatest weakness into your greatest strength? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear how you overcame moments when others tried to bring you down. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories that show how life's obstacles are often the lessons we need to change the world.